All right, hello everybody. Thank you for coming out on this Sunday. Also, is the cafe you're talking about called the Menagerie? Because anyway, there's a bar called the Menagerie right there. A few guys probably already know about it, and it's run by my friend Baz. So, I'm not going, but you guys should go. They've just redone it, and apparently it's pretty dope. So, yeah, you can check that out. It's just right next to yeah, it's pretty dope. Next to like Caraway Pier and all, just the line of food places just down there. I think it's open. All right, so yes, once again, thank you for coming out on Sunday, which is super appreciated. You guys are awesome, and hopefully I can tell you something. The good news is that you guys are the first. This is the first time I've ever really spoken about this since we started, just over a year ago now. The bad news is I don't really know what I'm talking about. It's probably going to be random as to the lessons I'm teaching you, but you know, we'll work through it together, and obviously we can clear up any stupidness at the end with questions, which I'm happy to take. So, who has heard of Prettygreat and what the story is? All right, a few of you. Cool. All right, so this is us. That's Luke Muscat on the left. He was the creator of Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride and many other games at Halfbrick. That's me. I was in charge of marketing. That's Hugh. He was art director also at Halfbrick. So there were 3 of us at Halfbrick, and then 3 of us left Halfbrick to start Prettygreat, which was, yeah, it was just over a year ago, almost exactly. And basically, I'll sort of elaborate a little bit more on why that happened and what we were trying to achieve. I have this slide. I don't really know why. That was a little piece of artwork that Hugh made just as we kind of started off, just to, you know, represent, hey, we're fun and we have parachutes, I suppose. And because basically when we started, it was right on the time of GDC, which we wanted to go to, and we didn't really have anything. We had no artwork. We had nothing. We were literally just hitting the ground running, trying to make stuff and build the brand of who we are. And I guess that was one of the first things we did. So I'll backtrack a little bit and explain a little bit of history about where I came to be standing here. I was at QUT. I did do a Bachelor of Business in marketing. I didn't do any game development stuff because I don't have any actual skills. I can only sort of talk and drink. And basically, you know, business was a lot of fun. I got into it because, you know, it was interesting, but on the side, you know, I'm always playing games. I'm going to events like this. I'm meeting up with the local industry. I'm making as many connections as I can in the interest of, you know, getting into like writing or even QA or something, just knowing that I wasn't going to be, you know, a programmer per se. And I suppose game designer down the track could have been or a producer could have been a viable goal for me. And, you know, I graduated that, and then I just did a bunch of random stuff that, you know, I'll come back to at the end, but, you know, I worked at this online poker place, and I did some game reviews and all kinds of different things like that for I don't even know how many years, not that many. And then basically, yeah, I started Halfbrick. I used this logo, even though it's not the current logo, because that was the one that I made when I first started there, because their old logo was old and lame, and now that I look at this, it's not much better. And that's why we changed it again later. But yeah, it was pretty sweet starting off at Halfbrick and getting things going. I was basically there to essentially start their entire marketing department because up until that time, I think it was in 2008 or 2009, they hadn't released any games like independently funded. Blastoff was a lot of fun. That was the first game that I ever worked on at Halfbrick. It was a little space planetary gravity game. Anybody played it? All right, yeah, a couple of people. I don't think you can get it on iPhone anymore. We originally made it for PSP minis because that was a big market at the time. Not really. But at the time, we'd made like a bunch of different games, little games like this, which were all pretty cool. And we just sort of chucked them out there and see what happened. And then we did take it to iPhone, but I don't think it's there anymore. I think we delisted it because of reasons. but by the end it was making, you know, sort of $10, $20 a day, and that was sort of, Blastoff was funding the beer money at Halfbrick for a few years, which is pretty cool. And then one of the most fun projects was Age of Zombies. Anybody played that? A couple of people. All right. Well, we also made it for minis, and then we ported it to iPhone, and then we supported that for many years actually. And I sort of came up with that was my first like foray into sort of being a designer, but not really. That project was really thrown together super quickly. I came up with like the premise of time travel, and the main character, Barry Steak Fries, is like a hero version of me. Yeah, and that was heaps of fun, and you know, those two projects I kind of look fondly on. Not that I don't look fondly on all the projects I worked on Halfbrick, which are all those, and the rest. And obviously Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride, you guys all know the story there, and so on and so forth. And you know, that's kind of where I suppose my, you know, the story of Prettygreat begins, because worked on a lot of these for a long time, many years, and it was heaps of fun, it was awesome. You know, Halfbrick was doing really well. And then at a certain point, you know, we reached the point where the games had achieved, you know, millions or billions of downloads or whatever. And, you know, I'd been there for 6 years, and I thought, you know, it's kind of fun. I think I'd be more excited, you know, starting something new with you know, getting our first 100 downloads would be more exciting than sort of taking, you know, 800 million to 850 million, you know, even though there's a massive amount there, 50 million downloads, like you just lose connection with it, because it's so huge. You know, it's like if you were working for a big multinational corporation, and it's like, oh, well, we need to improve, you know, conversion by 0.2%, which actually means, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars, but because it's so small and that you don't really feel any kind of connection with it, then you know, it loses that spark. And I suppose I needed to find that spark again. So that's when Prettygreat started. Which again, I think I was wrong. This was the very first piece of artwork we made. I don't know why. I think that we just needed a background for our holding website, and kind of the idea between the idea for the company was all about remarkable games made right. You know, basically saying, hey, we can get out there, we can make really awesome games that don't necessarily change the world, and we're not trying to make, you know, The Witness or, you know, I can't even think of any other games. Really awesome, really well-received games. But for us, you know, our experiences in mobile, we want to make something that people would, yeah, go, hey, that's pretty cool, and it sticks in their mind. And made right is kind of like, on the production side, we really want to do it fast. We want to be smart about how we make it, and get it out there fast, because that's kind of a critical thing in mobile, which I'll touch on a little bit later. So that was, yeah, a good kind of month or two of running around, planning, doing stuff like this, and then eventually we went to GDC March last year, right at the end of February, basically to we just, you know, we had no money. We didn't have like a company. We had our company, but you know, there was no assets. There was nothing sort of set up. GDC was right away. So we all paid our own way there, and I registered the company on at 1 a.m. on the night before we flew out, and then finished the company registration at Starbucks in San Francisco when we were there on the first day. I think this was a couple of hours after we landed. So that's the first, literally the first sort of office shot we've got here, which, you know, is pretty cool. There was a lot of fun, and we sort of made an announcement that we were starting a studio. And then GDC, I don't really remember too much of what happened. We met a lot of people. We had a lot of discussions and figuring out what we wanted to do. Unfortunately, you know, we didn't have any projects. We didn't have any ideas at the time. And so we couldn't be like, hey, we're making this. You want to work with us or whatever. But, you know, we got some really good perspective about our connections and who was interested in working with us. And it gave us a lot to think about when we got back, which, you know, we did. And I think we started, I'm not sure how many pictures of this I have here. So basically, we got back and we started almost immediately prototyping and coming up with ideas. So my role, as not a programmer, is to my title is managing director, which basically means everything that isn't game development. I manage the business, the finance, the marketing, the just the management of the studio and what we're going to do there. So in that way, it was really good for us because I was able to sort of do all that alongside the other guys who were basically, we were able to jump straight into making games right away. They didn't have to worry too much about doing documentation and setting all that stuff up, which is extremely important, which I'll touch on in just a little minute. And we made that desk. That was our first desk we made, and that computer is this computer. And we started off working underneath my house. There's a really crappy kind of, underhouse area. And that's another sort of shot. And looking at it now, it actually looks a bit nicer than I remember. It's like, for a startup, that's pretty good. But it definitely got pretty annoying after a while. I had a crappy outdoor glass table, and Hugh didn't have much, and Baz and Luke were sitting at the same table, cramped in there. And while that was happening, I was making sure we were setting up the company stuff. I was trying to find an office space. I was trying to do all kinds of things like that. And at the time, we got like let a few people know around Brisbane, and then ABC, no, it wasn't ABC, it was like Channel 7 came around to film our sort of little startup, but because they were like, hey, we want to talk to you about, exciting new startups and development space in Brisbane and things like that, and then the piece came out, and it was just like 2 seconds of me going, yep, we're working on games, and then the voiceover was like, and then developers like Phil Larsen, who could hopefully find a place to work instead of living in their parents' basement or something like that. And I was like, oh, well, that's not exactly how we were kind of going for this story, but it's all right. And then essentially we moved. We decided to get out of there and find a space. There's some most of this is just photos of my holiday. That's the night we moved into the city. We have an office in Queen Street. I don't know if any of you have been there. Maybe a couple have. And we just left on a Thursday night. It took me a long time to find a spot because you don't want to spend very much money, but you want it to be nice and conducive to a lot of creative development. And that's it. Which is actually pretty sweet. We got pretty lucky with the location. That's kind of at the top floor of a building in Queen Street, and we have that view of the Story Bridge, and we can stand out there on the balcony and look over the river and things like that, and we set up our desks. Again, we got pretty lucky with the space. We were looking at plenty of other places which weren't quite as nice, and this one just sort of showed up randomly, and we got a pretty good deal on it. They may kick us out in a few months because they realize it's probably worth more than it is, than we're paying for it. So we'll see. But basically the goal was to get a space that we could really sort of settle down and commit and make a lot of stuff work, because that's pretty important. You really need that space for your own, and otherwise you always feel pretty uncomfortable, which you can never put a exact number of how much extra work that creates or how slow you work compared to that, but it certainly makes a difference. Our productivity definitely jumped, and that was one of the first days or nights or whatever we were there. These guys were all from Halfbrick, and they're all not at Halfbrick. There's Maddie and Dean from Protostar. They made Sling Kong as well, so they're doing really well also. Now I don't know what this is. This is a black. Oh, this is a quick video that I made summarizing all of what I just said.
Trying to follow you, and you were just walking along and in front of a filming us. That's where I'm going.
We'll make the video footage.
Yeah, you suddenly see the thing just go. Yes, and it's the filming documentary. Filmmaker dies.
money bags.
Yeah, so that was, I hadn't necessarily planned on doing that, but I thought it'd be a good idea to, film a bunch of stuff that happened over those few months and cut it together into a little sizzle reel. Not a huge point to that, but, it's always important to sort of have something so that whenever you're talking to people or, you're meeting a publisher or investor or whatever, you can really sort of create that identity and establish that you guys have chemistry. And as I said, that's sort of what we started to try and do from the very beginning with, the artwork. And even though we didn't have a fully formed plan about where we were going and what games we were making, we just started to make stuff. And we just keep making things. And then you're able to sort of pick and choose different things and form it to get to come up with your brand. And on the brand, Prettygreat. That's an interesting kind of story there because we wanted to make something that it wasn't. I suppose the simplest way you can name a game studio is picking like a cool word and calling it that, like Evolution Games or Lightning Strike Productions or something like that. Which is fine and it works. There's probably a game company called Evolution Games already. But we didn't want to be. Our company represents like a pursuit of making really awesome shit at all times. So whenever we're not making games, we're building furniture. Like we're building our own desks and we're making a bunch of stuff. Hugh's at his workshop right now, building some things we're going to be using in video this week. And we all love cooking. We all love outdoor activities. We all just want to get involved with as much of that as we possibly can and represent us as the games gurus, I suppose, and other companies, ad agencies, creative groups, and can sort of get a glimpse of what we're all about while we're doing that. And Prettygreat, I suppose, we're pretty happy with the branding, and we can use it for a lot of different things in future. If we decide to start up a brewery, it'll be called Prettygreat Bitter or something like that. And I think we came up with that pretty early. It took a few weeks of brainstorming, and then I guess the next thing that came about was these guys, which you guys may know the story. They are Matt and Andy from Hipster Whale. They made Crossy Road, very successful. They invested in our company. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, probably because I'm not allowed to, but also, we're a GDC and looking for investors as well, which, you guys may or may not be doing. If you can bootstrap something, great. If you don't need to take any money, awesome. We ended up deciding to, with these guys, because we've actually known these guys for a long time anyway, and we sort of know their goals, and we know that we're very much aligned with them. We hope we can give them value, and also, those guys, putting investment is really great precedent for the Australian games industry, and those guys are very well respected for that, and they're going to be doing a lot of cool stuff in future, and hopefully so are we. So that the event that we make it big, we'll also be able to pay it forward and invest in other teams and support the industry as much as we possibly can. So that was kind of the idea behind that. If you're going into mobile development specifically and like free to play, which was mainly what we are, I don't know if any of you guys are. You may be focusing on PC stuff, which is cool. We could have raised a lot of money. We could have gotten, 1 million, 2 million even. But alongside that, there's a lot of different kind of expectations and goals you'd need to meet, which we probably can. But at the time, we wanted to make sure we established our kind of not comfort zone, because it sounds like we're not really doing anything, but it establish our kind of get in the zone and get settled, and part of that is the office space, and it is creating all that artwork that we can use, and it is sort of gelling in as many ways possible that isn't just making the game. So basically, if any of you guys are thinking of starting up a studio and want to go from there and see what you can make and things like that, I suppose I'll give you some pretty basic advice, which you've probably heard before, but I'll iterate on it again because it was very important for us. Get a lawyer. Very, very, very important. And don't think, oh yeah, maybe I'll think about it. No, just get one. It's gonna cost money, and you just have to deal with it. Like, if you don't, again, plenty of people don't, and they get away with it because it somehow works out for them. But if they don't, and you run into some trouble down the road, it's going to cost you a lot more than it would have if you just started from the beginning. And there's plenty of legal firms out there that are, give pretty cheap rates for startups and want to support, small teams. And if you're upfront about that from the beginning, it's fine. So basically, what you want to do is you want to make sure you've got your company set up the way you want. If you're say a couple of people collaborating on your own company and putting it and working on a project together, that's fine. There's ways you can arrange that legally. There's plenty of horror stories about what happens if you don't. Examples like Fez and Phil Fish, he had one, I don't know all the details, but he had one guy that left, and then he was screwing up the entire project, and you probably all saw Indie Game the movie. And again, you just don't want these things to happen. There was another example a few days ago. It was the guy that was making I can't remember, he posted a YouTube video explaining about why...
Ant Simulator?
Sorry?
The Ant Simulator?
Ant Simulator, was it? Was it called Ant Simulator?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. All right, yeah, anyway, that you want to avoid. Yeah. That you want to avoid. And don't get me wrong, you always think, these guys are cool, it's not going to happen. It can happen. And I don't mean to this be all doom and gloom, it's just smart. And this is just how every business works. It's not, if you start up a burger stand, you should do the same thing. And it'll save you money in the long run, I guarantee it. I've sort of touched on this. Yeah, get a space, creative space, anything that you can call your own, you can work on, and you can just make something really, really good. If you're comfortable sort of working from home and working remotely, that's cool too. I know we weren't. So basically, if you're not happy with where you are, then you might want to try and get somewhere else. And there's plenty of co-working spaces around, and there's a lot more sort of up and coming, which is cool. And probably the organizers and stuff know a lot more about that than I do at the moment. And get the hardware you need. Probably not that thing, but you want to make sure that if you're making mobile, you have a few different devices. You have the right machines to run everything. You want to do a little bit of expenditure up front. I mean, you can always bootstrap it, which is fine, but this worked for us, and I'm sure that we were able to release things a lot faster because of it. All right, so enough of that's kind of boring. Need to be said, but. The next thing is I want to talk about how we started making games and the process that we came up with. You guys may be familiar with something like that. Unfortunately, you can't really see much there at all. But this is a 2-page prototype sheet, right? Because I often come up with game ideas, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And then I get all excited about it, and then I start thinking, wow, this is going to be $1 million idea, and I got to get this going right away. So Luke said, hey, that's cool. This is all you need to do to start your prototype. So we started off with a bunch of ideas. Let's say 50 ideas. We use just random, bam. How about a game where you punch dolphins in the face, and how about a game where you ride cactuses on Jupiter? And that's basically all you need to do. And this is on. We posted this on our Facebook page if anybody ever wants to download it. So it's basically the name is. This summary, just write. It's better to draw than write. Always, it's better to keep things simple and just show people what you're doing. I would always just write it because I didn't know what I was doing. So essentially, game where you punch dolphins in the face and you get a really high score. 30 seconds of gameplay. That's really cool. So you actually describe in pretty much explicit detail what 30 seconds of gameplay is going to look like. You do this, and then you do this, and then you do that, and then 30 seconds is up. The MVP, minimum viable product. So that's how much is going to be in the game that you think is going to be good enough to launch, and then build off. It's good enough to be successful in its own way, and then you could potentially build off from there. So maybe for Dolphin Puncher, you can punch dolphins, but then if you start thinking about RPG quests and challenges, that's probably not going to be viable for the first release because it's going to take too much time. These last things here, you've got a thing called X Factor / street cred. Right? Now that's a little bit harder to define. You look at a game like Jetpack Joyride, that X Factor in the sense that it's a cave flyer, which had been around for a long time. That kind of X Factor, it was just so polished and so stylish and had so much content. That in itself is good enough to be an X Factor or a position for the game. X Factor for something like Braid would be, it's puzzle platforming, but also it's amazing theme and its philosophical messages. I don't even know what they are, but apparently it worked out well. Same deal with stuff like The Witness now. You've got the audience, who's it going to be for? This is always a little bit hard to define, especially if you're not in marketing, and especially if you're in mobile games, because it's like, well, as many people as possible would be ideal. But do it your best you can. MVP difficulty, so okay, it's a game about slicing fruit, super easy, it'll only take us a few weeks to make that, and so that's a 2 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. And then potential business model, so how are you going to make money? And there was plenty of times when I was so convinced that I had such a great idea, and then essentially working through this, you give yourself 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes to just write this stuff down. Because Luke said, here you go, great, write it down. And then as I'm writing it down, I'm like, oh, it helps present questions in your head. Oh crap, maybe that wouldn't work out the way I thought, or maybe my idea wasn't as fully fleshed out as I thought it was. And in reality, it's not going to work out. And this is the best way to find that reality as soon as possible. That's what we're all about, because rapid prototyping, we need to find if it's going to be fun as quickly as possible. It really sucked to work on a game for a month or 2 months and suddenly we realize it's not going to work. That's what we want to avoid as much as possible in doing this. It's still probably going to happen at some point, I'm sure, but we try and avoid that by preparing as much as possible with this kind of thing. So, and the good thing is this is really fun. It's a super fun process. If you're there with a couple of people, you just got all these amazing ideas, and then once you're all finished writing down, you start presenting them to people, and you're talking through everything. The interesting thing is Landsliders did not come out of this at all. So I don't know what to tell you. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And don't get me wrong, sometimes you do come up with a great idea, and it's basically all systems go from the beginning, which is cool. So. And the next thing about how we make games and the velocity that we do it, Luke can speak better than that, so I'll quickly play this video that we filmed a while ago, which I haven't shown to anybody before.
4 months is the correct amount of time to spend developing a game. Exactly 4 months. No, I think that it should be, for a casual mobile game, you're crazy to spend more than 6 months. Because mobile changes so much, it changes so often, that if you make a game and you spend like a year working on it, there's a good chance that whatever that game was trying to achieve has already moved on and gone past it by now. So apparently, because I've said that a few times, that spending longer than 6 months seems crazy. There's so much risk and so much investment in something so fickle. But apparently Matt Hall posted that to Facebook, and I think it's a huge deal. He posted it like the Australian Game Dev group, which I don't know, I don't use Facebook. But he posted it and said like, Luke said this, I completely agree, or some shit like that. And there's like hundreds of comments, and like people are really angry about it. And there's like all these people coming in from one side, like, no, you asshole, like, you can spend time to craft something really amazing, and that's the secret. And then other people going, no, you should do it fast and fail quickly. And, it's that kind of, make something perfect versus agile methodology going on there. So, yeah, I don't know, apparently that's a hot talking point. I should dive into the thread.
Yeah, so like, I've been thinking about that for a while, and I really like the fact that people would, and if they have the ability to spend heaps of time on something and make it, polish it, and get it to everything that you ever want it to be and release it, that's really great. The reason why we do it so fast is because we know we'd probably screw up at some point. That it's more of a comment on our abilities and our focus than anything else. I mean, we'd probably get bored working on something for longer than 6 months, and but some people wouldn't. They want something to be a bit bigger or happy to stay motivated to keep it going. And the mobile market is, it probably fickle is not the right word, because that implies that it doesn't have, quality. It certainly does, but it does change a lot. And don't get me wrong, plenty of people have worked on games for a long time and then released it, and they've done really well. There's heaps of examples, so it's not nearly as rare as Luke makes it out to seem. But we think that for the ideas that we want to do and the remarkable games that we're talking about, we just don't think we need to take longer than that. So. Maybe, if we make millions of dollars and suddenly we have that luxury, I dare say that there's a time or two that we might end up, no, let's spend an extra few months on this because we want it to be awesome. That might happen. But we think the business for us is going to work pretty well. And, but clearly, if you're Alexander Bruce and you work on any chamber for 5 years, it works out great for him too. So it depends, and it does depend on the market as well, because obviously this specifically refers to mobile games. Which sort of leads me to our first game, which was Landsliders. This game basically came about because after we'd done sort of our brainstorming session, at the end of it, we just still didn't think any of those ideas were good enough or exciting enough to be our first game. And there was an element of hey, it's our first game, we want it to be pretty sweet. There's other games that we're making that would be smaller or different that we could work on later. But our first game needed to really kind of be unique and be pretty stylish. And then I think Luke came up to me. I was just sitting on my glass desk under the house one day, and Luke came up, hey, I've got this idea for this kind of scrolling the world to control game. And I was like, what would that be all about? And it was sort of, originally it was kind of like you're like the world is ending and you're trying to avoid all the traps and meteors that are coming down and trying to escape on whatever escapey thing that you need. And we created the prototype. I looked for these images for this prototype. I couldn't find it. I'm sure I'll find it later. And we put together, this is a little kind of summary. There's nothing there that you probably haven't sort of seen before. Explore and be rewarded. Death is funny. You move the world. And that was kind of like an image that we, one of the first sort of world concept image. The world is built on like a hexagon grid. Originally, it looked way more hexagon-y than it does today, because we kind of adjusted all the edges and stuff. And to give it that kind of style, we definitely didn't want to go with the kind of the voxel art style, because a lot of people were sort of doing that. But we wanted to make something pretty unique. And I guess this is the best representation of the current artwork, because we made this just the other day. We've got like the monkey and the lion, because we just released a Chinese New Year update, which is pretty cool. And I've got another video, which is kind of like a quick design summary again that features Luke.
I am Luke Muscat. I'm the creative director at Prettygreat. I had to think about what my job title was. So Landsliders is a simple, fast arcade game where you control crazy cast of characters who are trying to collect the thing they always want. So if you're using the princess, you're trying to collect unicorns. If you're using the UFO, you're trying to collect cows, of course, in this surprising and randomly generated world to get a really high score. But the twist is you're not just controlling the character around the world. The character is stationary, and you actually drag the whole world around underneath the character. So I wanted to have really easy, intuitive, simple controls that anyone could play. But then this whole element of procedural generation and kind of surprises and mystery. So it procedurally makes a brand new 3D world every single time you play. I am sure players are going to love the characters. It's not just, who you play as, what are they trying to collect? It gets them thinking about, okay, well then maybe you have a toilet and it collects plungers or toilet paper, and you have a birthday cake, and then what would that collect? It would collect candles. I love the astronaut, mostly I think because of the antenna and because of the black background of the transition. Astronaut for the win. A lot of the characters have interesting little twists that they put on the world, so I think players are really going to have fun digging through them. And I can't wait to hear everyone's ideas so that we can put them into the game.
Yeah, so we, again, part of my role is to do that kind of stuff. So I can essentially set as much of that stuff up as I can, turn around and say, hey, Luke, let's talk about the game for 20 minutes. Done. Then he'll go back to work, and I'm able to sort of put that together. So having that, early marketing kind of vision is part of my job, and we're able to sort of spend a little bit more time on that, which is obviously really important. It sucks when you don't have that, and I totally understand plenty of small teams don't, but then you just need to budget a bit more time at the end of development for that. And we can do kinds of fun things like putting developers in the game as unlockable characters. I think now we have like 80 or 90 characters plus gold versions of every single character. So there's like 160 something characters to collect. Gold characters are extremely rare. Who has played Landsliders, by the way? Anybody? Oh, a bunch of you. Okay, cool. Thanks. It's out on Android now as well. If you guys didn't know that, you can get it. So, yeah. But not everything went peachy. Some things went wrong, and I suppose not hugely. In the grand scheme of things, we did pretty good because as part of the idea, we did make Landsliders in 4 months, which was pretty sweet. We got that done really fast. And I suppose a couple of things that we've learned from and we'll sort of apply next time. We love the characters, as we sort of said, and this is a really cool little piece of art that Hugh rendered out really nicely. So those characters look really like plasticky, like they're nice little figurines. And in the game, you actually take them out of your box. We made a bunch of these boxes too, and 3D printed some characters. So that's a lot of fun. The problem was, we thought, oh wow, all these characters are kind of cool, and how funny would it be to play as a fridge or whatever? So we created a bunch of random characters. Who knows what that in the top left is? Yes. What a champ. Yeah, so I'm the only one who got that joke, apparently. No one in the whole world cared. No one cared. No one wanted to play as a fridge or a washing machine or a cube or a light bulb. We thought it was pretty cool, and we're like, oh yeah, everyone's going to love it, but no, it's just dumb. And they don't, all the stats show that nobody cares. They like the lion, and they like the astronaut, and they like the princess, and all the characters and animals. But these abstract characters just suck. So, thanks, but no thanks.
Do many people play as the toilet?
Toilet's probably one of the better performing reject characters. But yeah, and I think we had a few. There's a lot. There's like a plate of tacos, which we tried to be like, Instagram likes and things like that. The next thing was we made these kind of social, death cards when you died, like sort of snaps a picture, and but they didn't always turn out that great. So we didn't really get that much sharing. We probably were better off to create shareable cards for like the characters and things like that, or some of the items. So not too many people shared that. I mean, at the end of the day, it was fine because it was a cool way to transition back to the menu anyway. But that was probably the biggest. I don't know what's wrong with this slide, but I'll elaborate on the issue. So the idea of sliding the world is pretty cool, and we were pretty happy with it, and it still is good. I think our first prototype was like a flat 2D plane and had all these squares, and it felt really like scrolling like a page or a photo. The issue, and everyone we showed it to at our early days picked it up pretty much right away, and they got it. So we just kind of went, yeah, it works, it's easy, and then we kept going. And then sort of the way that we ended up building the world and building the 3D and the perspective and things, I guess a bit of that got lost, and then it became pretty hard. Again, we didn't really see that because we were playing it every step of the way, and we were always good at it. So did anyone have trouble with the controls when they first picked it up? Hands up. Yeah, one or two, yep. So, and right towards the end of the development, a lot more people started saying that. And we were like, ugh, that's kind of crap, that's not good. We really don't, the idea was this supposed to be really super intuitive and really easy to play. I mean, you give it to little kids and they would just pick it up instantly because I guess they're all experts and adults suck at games. But basically, towards the end, we were like, crap, maybe this wasn't quite as intuitive as we wanted. I mean, the game itself, collecting stuff and all the worlds is still totally sweet. But the last minute, we put in sort of the slide the character. So instead of the opposite way, it was the non-opposite way. But in the game, it was actually the opposite way. And basically, we popped that in people's faces pretty much right away, just at the end of the tutorial. Like, yo, do you want to keep doing this control? Or do you want to do it the other way? And a lot of people, when we showed them that, they were instantly, oh, okay, I get it now. And they're zooming around, and it's working great. So that was a close one. I don't know how bad it would have been if we'd just left it as the way it is, but in hindsight, you never know. But it was a pretty big design. It wasn't an oversight. It was just a decision we had to make at the end. And then we released it, and it went pretty good. We got some good support. It went pretty high in the charts, and enough that we were like, yep, let's keep making updates for it. And let's support it for a while, because that was the plan. And we released it at the end of September, so we were able to kind of start. Man, it feels like it's been ages, but it hasn't even been that long. And this is an example of one of the updates we made for Halloween. With a little secret surprise.
I think everyone's going to get a really good surprise about just how different we've made the world feel for Halloween.
We tried to add something new to each part of the game, whether it's characters, levels, set pieces, all kinds of stuff.
We have a zombie, of course.
He collects brains, obviously.
We have a sarcophagus, which is actually really cool.
While playing, the door swings open and the mummy kind of like falls out. It gives a nice midday sun feeling like you're in the desert.
If you collect enough jack-o'-lanterns, then that unlocks the vampire.
We have this new tech to the game, so lightning strikes, they'll hit trees and like leave smoke and stuff. He also sparkles.
My favourite character is Miss Calavera. She's there for Mexican Day of the Dead.
She adds a lot of life and colour to the world through her background and the sugar skulls she collects. And we're super excited to have 2 extra special guest characters.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Schaefer from Double Fine Productions, and we heard that Landslide was doing some cool stuff for Halloween, and we didn't think it would be a real Halloween celebration without Random Realm from Costume Quest. Which makes sense, because they often get lost and find themselves in crazy mix-em-ups. But they can handle it, because they have candy.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. We were very excited to work with those guys, which wasn't much more than, hey, can we use these characters? And they were like, sure. So I guess the lesson is, it's not going to happen if you don't ask. And I've known Tim for a few years. It's not that we hang out or anything regularly, but the game development community is pretty cool, and the fact that our game had that kind of style and the characters kind of fit already, it worked out pretty well. So that was a nice little thing we were able to do for the update, sort of to give it an extra little bit of magic. And the other thing is that we've done in this game was the ARG, which is the augmented reality game or geocaching or whatever you want to call it. Do any of you guys know about that? One person? All right, so this is like an entire talk all on its own. So I'm unfortunately not going to be able to go into too much detail, but I'll give you the gist of it. We took 18 USBs, put a secret coded image on them, hid them in 18 different cities around the world, hit up our friends in wherever and said, hey, we send you this image, can you hide it somewhere? That was hid by George Broussard, the guy that made Duke Nukem 3D, because Luke knows him on some design thing. We're going to follow each other on Twitter, and we just said, hey, who wants to do this? So people find it. And then what we did was we got the people that hid the USBs. When they hid them, they got on their phone and pinpointed the GPS location, and then they sent it to us. And then we put the GPS location inside little alters inside the game, so that people would be playing the game and they'd come across this thing and there's a bunch of random numbers and be like, what the hell is this? Type it in and it'd pinpoint this location in, Dubai. We put one in Dubai. And then people, we said nothing this whole time. And people started talking about it on a forum, going, what the hell is this? And then finally somebody went along and found a USB somewhere. I forget the first one that was found. And then they were like, what the hell is this? And there was an image that that basically there was one image on each USB, but you couldn't solve the puzzle with just one. You needed 6. So we had sort of three lots of 6 in the case that not everybody found every one. And I think they ended up finding like 15 or 16 of them. And then essentially, so people had to come together, communicate, piece the images together, find a secret code, and then that code unlocks a secret keypad that you can find in the game by standing on this crop circle glyph type thing that people started emailing and saying, what the hell is this? Obviously, we wouldn't tell them. And then eventually you put in the code, and then that's when it really begins the adventure. To the point where, we had people, we started laser engraving these wooden secret codes that people would then be directed to a website, and then you have to follow this Twitter account, then you have to do this and this and this. Blah, 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 blah. Then you had to go to see Luke's talk at GCAP in Melbourne, and then he would hit a clue in his slide, and then you'd get a clue to go to an escape room in Sydney, and the guys in the escape room set up this big Landsliders themed room, and you have to solve the puzzle, and you get a puzzle box at the end and reveal that. Went on for a while, and it just ended. If you do want to check out some of the details, you can go to TouchArcade. They posted a kind of a roundup article about it when I guess it came to an end only a couple of weeks ago. And then you can follow the forum, which is like 150 pages long, with all kinds of people going through all the details. So that was, this is a crazy idea. In the grand scheme of things, it was actually not that much work because it was all online. We just kind of had to chuck this alter in the game, and it took 20 minutes to build this model, and then we create the image and sort of go from there. So we were actually working on it still after it had launched. We didn't do everything before launch. But it was a fun little side project to support that. And that was pretty fun. Again, that's kind of like the philosophy of us trying to make stuff really great. And then the game did well. It won a couple of awards at the Australian Game Developer Awards. It won Innovation, which we're pretty happy about, and it actually won Game of the Year, with the other two nominees being Armello and Satellite Rain. And I was like, ugh, really? Those games are amazing. But we were, and we felt a little bit bad about that. But then we didn't. But those games are amazing, trust me, and we were not expecting that at all. But yeah, we're pretty happy with it. And then we got Game of the Year on TouchArcade as well, which was pretty cool. And it's sort of gone on from there. And I touched on this before. We did our Chinese New Year update, Sunday, 2 or 3 days ago. So we added a bunch of new characters. We added a new quest, so you can unlock the Lion Dancer there, and they have golden characters and golden monkey and all kinds of fun things like that as well. So basically, I had this slide before, which is, I did a bunch of random bullshit before I started in games. And I guess the message that I wanted to give was, yeah, I did it, but you just need to take everything in. And the reality is opportunity comes when you're in that position to take advantage of it. And the fact that you guys are here, that's a great example of just doing something and being as proactive as you can to get involved with stuff. I can count a million times, moving back the years where it's like, oh, if I hadn't have done this, then I would have done that. And you can't dwell on that too much. You just got to be, appreciative of where you are at the time. So, I try and find the value in every single thing we do, and hopefully that'll keep going with Prettygreat. And I didn't include a slide about this, but, the game's been downloaded about 3 million times so far, which is good. I mean, it's not, in the world of free-to-play and free games, it's not mind-blowing, because there's plenty of games that have, 10, 50, 100 million downloads. But we might get there one day. But we are already working on our second game, which is related to this. Some of you may even know what it is because we've been pretty liberal with our test flights and it's not a massive secret. But if you do know it, don't tell anybody just yet. We'll be releasing it pretty soon. It's not far away because it's a much smaller game than Landsliders was. But we're still trying to adhere to the philosophy of it's remarkable, it's unique, it says something. And because it was pretty quick, we think we can get it out there and say something about it. So, and I guess the final thing is, we made this as a piece of artwork to try and demonstrate. It's all about making stuff. So what should we make today? Is it going to be a video game or is it going to be a pizza? It doesn't matter. So long as we're making it and we're keeping our creative juices flowing, then it's good. And that's it. That's all I got for you. But like I said, I mean, hopefully that gives you some insight into the story. If you have any questions, I can't stay around too long for mingling, but if you have any other questions about the things, then shout them out. Yeah.
So one thing is making the game, but then how do you guys keep track of what's happening? And do you guys keep on changing it, like optimizing things to to get more people to buy the items? Or
is this after launch?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So the question was, do we keep optimizing things and changing things to get people to buy things? Definitely. When we launched, we didn't have the buying for the characters particularly prominent. We didn't have the bundle character pack. We didn't have pop-ups to show, hey, this character is available. We didn't have the quest. All that was added in launches after the first launch. So if we'd started with that, we probably would have made a lot more money because the character bundle pack became like really our biggest seller. And we probably would make even more money if we sell coins in the game, which we might start doing in a future update. So, again, it's free to play. We want to do things right. We want to do things responsible. We don't want to go too crazy down the road of controversy that some games have. But, at the end of the day, it's a business model and we're making money. So, but our primary revenue comes from advertising, like rewarded video that you can opt into. So, yeah. Yeah, questions?
How well is rewarded video working?
Really well, yeah. Your rewarded video is good. It obviously started, Crossy Road was it wasn't the first thing to do it, but it really sort of did really well. Obviously that's because of the game itself is really fun to play. Rewarded video is not golden something. It will complement your revenue if your game is good and if people want to play it and find value in watching ads. But you put it at smart times and don't overwhelm people, and yeah, it should work.
with one video that's played, like
how much do you make with one video? It basically, the way that ad revenue works is it's eCPM, effective cost per 1,000 views. So essentially, if you get 1,000 people viewing one ad, you'll make X dollars. Typically, a good benchmark for an eCPM is like $15. If you can get a $15 eCPM in your game, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, which means every 1,000 views you make $15, which doesn't sound like much, but obviously you want to get a lot of people playing the game and it adds up. If you get an eCPM of like, $20 or above, that's really good, and you've definitely got a winner there. And it goes up and down totally. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on, does the person click on the ad and convert to another game, and does it? The world of mobile advertising is crazy. I don't understand it all. I'm trying to, but yeah, it's working out all right for us. Yeah.
So you plan to scale up by onboarding additional small gaming teams and do model games concurrently?
Yeah. So the question was, are we going to scale by doing more small games? Probably, that's definitely within the realms of possibility. We want to do that. If let's say if we were making like way more money, we would probably have done it already, or maybe just sort of started. But I think we've got a pretty good velocity. We're able to make updates to Landsliders, but also release a brand new game at the same time. So until sort of we're able to prove that we can sustain that. Then that's when we might look at scaling up. In general, we don't want to get very big at all. Like maybe we'll get to 10 people sometime in future, but a bit higher than that is not particularly likely. Yeah.
Do you use any third-party tool for analytics?
Yeah, we use game analytics.
Game analytics.
Yes.
So to add on to that last one, how do you find that you get so much value out of such a small team? Is it just because you gel all together, you got experience, you just make smart decisions?
Yeah. So we do gel together. I guess all of the above. We make the smart decisions. We're fast at what we do, and we can scrap ideas, and we trust each other. I mean, the trouble is, it's hard to just make that happen. And I suppose we all have the added benefit of working together previously, even though we actually never did. Luke never worked with Hugh really on a team, and I never worked with those guys, on a regular. I mean, I worked with them because they were always on a game team, and I was in marketing. But yeah, it seemed to work out really well, and we all gelled together, and I guess it shows in the production speed we can do. Yeah.
So from a production or team standpoint, how are you working on the new game? Like, how are you dividing that time updating Landsliders?
So, yeah, we're able to divide our time. At least, we don't have too many examples of this so far. But what we did was we jumped on the Chinese New Year update pretty early. Got that planned out as quickly as we can. And I guess the benefit of Luke being a good producer as well as a designer is he can basically plan something, and that's basically what it's going to be. There's not really going to be too much changes that we have to worry about later down the track. It's going to happen. So we're able to sort of plan that. So that's all in place, and the game was built. The update was designed around how the game was built. So we knew we could do these characters. We knew we could create this quest system based on the previous quest system we did for Christmas. Blah, 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 blah. So we were able to plan it out pretty smartly. And then we're like, bam, okay, let's spend the next 3 weeks working on our next game, which we did at the end of last year. Came back, finished the Chinese New Year update, shipped that straight back onto the new game, and we're away. While that's happening, Luke can kind of jump over to another project, and he can take our new game forward by making some levels really fast that doesn't need any programming or art support. And yeah, so we're able to do it pretty agile so far. If we have 3 games, that's gonna cause some problems, I'd say, and we may need to add on another person or 2. But yeah, I guess we've just kind of winged it, but as much preparation as we can has worked out pretty well.
Any tips for marketing in regards to the first game and previous experience and stuff?
Yeah, tips for marketing. I mean, that's basically my whole life, and has been my life for many years. The problem is and it changes. The market changes, and therefore your marketing changes. You can't just send out a press release and expect it to do really well. You can't even get a bunch of press coverage and think it's going to do well off that. It just won't. Word of mouth is a huge part of your marketing, and that's where you need to be involved as much as you can early days with the designer, figuring out the game's position, figuring out as soon as Luke had come up with the idea, I was thinking about names, and I was thinking about logos, and I was thinking about how you can present this and how you can craft the message to people, and already written app store descriptions and things like that. I started, just making those behind-the-scenes videos. You start sharing those with people. Oh, this guy's interested. He wants to post it as well. And then, so all of the things that you can think of for marketing, press releases, social media, doing videos, doing streaming, which we haven't done really at all, but it's a good idea if you've got time. All kinds of things like that. The problem is there's no one thing that's going to achieve it. So, and I know it sucks to hear, but the most important thing about marketing is consistency. Just keep doing it. Even though I've been in it for many years, even at Halfbrick, when we were working on something, it's not like, everybody's hustling, is what I'm saying. It doesn't matter how big you are, who you are, you still need to keep working at it, because if you get into an area of complacency, then people are not going to care, and they're going to give up, and you still need to keep the word going and keep posting content. Even though our first video that we posted probably had 50 views, doesn't matter. The next one, maybe you can get 70 views. That's something. The next one might have 10 views. Oh, that sucks. Oh, well, next one, 1,000 views. Okay, now we're in business. It's that kind of thing, and you just can't get disheartened. And again, it's easy for me to say because that's what I do all day. It's much harder for a team that is also working on the game at the same time. The Protostar guys that make Sling Kong, that's just 2 of them, and they're doing an amazing job at balancing it. So I don't know, they probably, they're good to learn from for getting it where they need to, but they work really, really long hours as well. So cool. Yeah.
So it sounds like that continually hustling, that's maybe what got you down a bit at Halfbrick as well.
Oh no! I wouldn't say that. No, I guess because I've been working with other people's ideas and other people's games for so long, which is fine. I'm totally fine with that. If I came up with the idea for our next game at Prettygreat, the first thing I would do is all right, now I don't know what I'm doing. Luke, you take it and make it whatever you want to make it, and that'll work. But continuing to hustle again, it's not the accurate word. It makes it sound sleazy when it's not really. Marketing isn't sleazy if you do it right, and it's that's definitely not what got me down at Halfbrick at all. It was definitely more the and it wasn't either down either. It was just like, hey, I'm 30 now. I want a new challenge and want to start a company. That was basically it. Yeah.
How do you decide when Landsliders doesn't need any more updates?
Good question. Yeah, how do I decide when Landsliders doesn't need more updates? When the updates don't make enough money to support development. That's more or less it.
As long as it's making money, you keep doing updates.
Yeah, you'd be crazy not to. Yeah, I mean, any business in the world, if you're making a profit, you keep making that profit. You have to.
I feel like it can get to a point where it will just make the profit without the updates.
Yeah, it can get to that point, definitely. I mean, you have the legendary games like the Temple Runs and even the Crossy Roads. They're going to make shitloads of money for a long, long time. But you can make more money if you keep supporting it. Like Temple Run did an update over Christmas and it blew up. It was massive. It got even way higher than it must have had way more downloads than it had in the previous 6 months or even a year. So, I mean, and don't get me wrong, like the goal is not always just make as much money as you can all the time, but if people enjoy working on the game and you can create new cool stuff for it, why not? And if you're able to make money, great. And at Halfbrick, don't get me wrong, games switch teams a bunch because people do get sick of working on it. You don't want to force a team to work on, Jetpack Joyride for 5 years. It's totally understandable that they want to try something new.
You're going to keep bringing out another game every 4 to 6 months, and you're going to have to do updates to every single one of those games.
Yeah, we may need to expand to do that, and at some point we may say, well, this game is still making money, but not that much, so it's probably a better opportunity cost to put that team onto this game, which may make more money. It's all kind of a balancing act. In terms of releasing a game every 4 months, the production-wise is basically going to be 4 to 6 months, but it's not. I don't think it's going to be a reality that we release games every 4 to 6 months. The reason why is because, Landsliders, we updated it a bunch of times afterwards. This next game is going to be releasing real soon just because it's pretty small. Not every game. This is about as simple as we're going to make it. So once we finish this, then we may need another 4 months after that and then release it. And so it's a rolling kind of thing. And if you do have 2 or 3 teams, then yeah, we should be able to hit something every 4 months. Yeah.
You said before about getting a lawyer. What specifically does the lawyer do for a startup? So contracts?
Yep. So the question was, what does a lawyer do for a startup? Basically helps you define the rules and regulations of a business. Now, there's 2 things that if you're starting a business together, starting a company, then you need a shareholders agreement and you need a constitution. The constitution's, every company has one, but a shareholders agreement is kind of where you want to spend a lot of your time. I read mine a gazillion times, and you make tiny little edits, and it's basically like, here's who owns the shares, and here's their responsibilities, and here's what happens if this happens. Here's what happens if this guy goes crazy, and here's what happens if this guy says, screw you guys, I don't want to work here anymore, and here's what happens, blah, 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 blah. You try and catch as many scenarios as you can, and here's the power that this guy has, and here's if this guy has this type of share, then they have this other responsibility, and you need a board of directors, which is created by these guys who have voting control because they have these types of shares, all kinds of things like that. You can make it any way you want. A lawyer is happy to work with you. Well, of course they're happy to work with you. To make it however you want. You can make it work whatever structure you want. Obviously, ours is pretty simple. But if you're coming and it's like, oh, well, this company and this company, sole traders per se, want to make a project together, and the project can be held by this IP holding company, and then essentially the shares for that company held in trust, which are also owned by this company, all kinds of things like that. It sounds like I didn't know too much about it before I started, and I'm still learning, and I still can't remember everything, but it's actually kind of cool. And it gives you a really good sense, like, hey, this is legit. The problem is you don't want to be like, oh, I'll go to easylawyer.com and download some template, you know, it's just not going to work. And the other thing about a lawyer is, if someone says you run into some trouble down the road, a lawyer already knows all about your company, you know, so it's going to save you a lot more money than being like, oh, okay, now we need to dig through months and months of crappy contracts and dodgy things, and what did this guy say in this email 6 months ago? Which does that email count as a binding contract to this project? Probably not, because like you don't want to avoid that because you've got everything in writing ready to go. That is what's going to cause you a million problems.
In practice, does that boil down to if someone leaves and doesn't participate, you can buy them out? Or
Yep, all kinds of things like that. You could say, yep, you need to buy them out, or their shares vest, or they can transfer, or they don't need to buy bought out. They automatically go and you forfeit all your shares for nothing. Any way you want it to work, you can make it work. Yeah.
Find a way of cating for situations that come up a lot is the person that you're working with, you don't feel like they're working very hard.
So that comes down to, I think that kind of stuff is in the Constitution. If someone's not working very hard, or you know, the powers of what you can do and switching roles and things like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. At the end of the day, if it's going to shit, then it's not going to be pleasant, no matter how sweet your contract is. But what it is going to make things a lot simpler and know the responsibilities you have. Like if everything was solved so that it had to be no discussions if it went bad, then you know that's not what a shareholders agreement does. It makes it easier and it gives clear rights to everybody. But at the end of the day, people still take issue with that, and things can get hairy. And I'm making it out to be worse than it is, because it's not. It's pretty straightforward, especially if you know each other, and then it shouldn't be too bad. Yeah, mate.
I suppose, still on the topic of legals, when you did talk to Team Chief to try and license out his characters, did it just involve an email, or was there other things down the road?
No, there was other things. Yes, but they're pretty simple. That's, you know, and the same deal with when we've.
Written contracts.
Sorry.
Written contracts.
Yeah. There's contracts involved. But those kinds of things are super simple. Like those are just like licensing things. It's no different to you know, licensing music or whatever you want. It's just like, you know, if someone wanted our characters in their game, like, you know, we'd essentially say, yep, here's a contract that says you guys can use the characters in this game. You make as much money if you want of it. We don't care. You don't need to pay us anything. But you can't use them for anything else. Done. You know, it's pretty simple. When you want to start getting into code development, let's make a game with these two IP together, you know, then it's going to become more complicated. But yeah, if you want to do it simple and everyone is pretty clear on their understanding, then it'll get done pretty fast. Any other questions? I think we're all set. Sweet. All right, well, thanks again. Like I said, you can, I haven't put my email, it's phil@prettygreat.com if you want to. It's pretty simple, and we're on Facebook and Twitter if you want to follow our stuff. We'll be announcing our second game pretty soon. And if you see any of us around at other events, hit us up. Cheers. Thank you.